Hey everybody, welcome to the Fire It Up with CJ show. Today we have Denise Wiesner on and we're talking about her book, Conceiving with Love. Can you hold up your book?
Hey.
Yay, Conceiving with Love. And in the previous segment, we were talking about people who are trying to bring a baby into the world and some of the common problems that they have. And in that section, we were talking about the five elements and how that comes into play. And I want to talk about those five elements and how they are the ground for love making, intimacy, and how they all fit together.
Yeah, I love this topic so much because I feel like the topic of sexuality is not addressed in the fertility world. Right?
Mm.
Everybody comes and they don't really tell you what's going on and why they're not conceiving. And oftentimes when I dig in a little further, I notice that there's some problems there. So it's a great
Mm.
topic for me.
With intimacy or
With
the wheel.
intimacy and with intimacy and actually the process of conceiving, like having intercourse at the right time.
Mm. Okay, so for those people, because intimacy means so many different things to so many people, can you first just do a baseline definition of what intimacy means when you define it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of into me I see
Hmm.
is a beautiful way to really describe what intimacy is. I think it's really looking at our partner and accepting them for who they are and take care of them and listen to them, practice forgiveness and be grateful. It's a lot more than just sexuality when we talk
Hmm.
about intimacy, right? And
Hmm.
for women, and I've heard this a lot from the women I've been working with, that it's hard for them to have sexuality unless they feel this connection with their partner, right? This
Hmm.
heart opening intimacy, if you will, right? And
Right.
it's something I've been just hearing a lot. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So then how is intimacy in this case, like, how is this related to the five elements for lovers?
So what I did was I took Chinese medicine in my book and I made this 5 element lovers wheel. So we
Hmm.
talked about the sort of like what gets out of balance, but I took it a step further and went into what gets out of balance when we're a couple trying to make a baby or trying to be have love making, and
Hmm.
touching. How do we do it? And I kind of started with the earth element.
Hmm.
So like we talked about the earth element earlier and being sort of about our digestion, but in terms of sexuality, earth lovers are people that are always out to please the other person, but really don't ask for what they want. Right? So
Mm.
you're always like pleasing, 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 but you forget to
Mm.
ask for what you want, then there's an imbalance, right? You don't get your needs
Hmm.
met. And then there's the bigger question of how do we ask for what we want,
Right.
especially in the bedroom? Like that's so loaded, right?
Right.
How do we communicate about sexuality?
Right.
Big one. So that's kind of earth. And also a big thing that I notice about both men and women is people, one of the obstacles for lovemaking is body image, how we
Hmm.
feel in our bodies,
Hmm.
right? I mean, people like don't feel good in their bodies, don't want to be touched in certain ways. And
Hmm.
women, I think especially have a lot of issues around like what do they smell like? What do they taste like? I'm gonna really
Mm.
get down to it, right? And
Hmm.
is their abdomen too fat?
Hmm.
Right? It's like there's such a I notice that a lot of women just not a love for what their bodies are.
Mm. Wait, and sorry, can you remind me the element again in that we talked
That's
about?
the earth element.
Oh, still Earth.
Yeah,
Okay, so it's
earth is
asking
like
for what you
nourishing,
want.
worrying, asking for what you want, and about our self-esteem, how we feel like earth mothers,
Mm.
how we feel in our body, men and
Mm.
women, not just women. I mean, I had a patient that like didn't want to take off, that would tell his partner he didn't want to take off his shirt because he felt weird about his boobs. He
Hmm.
felt like he had man boobs and was really kind of,
Oh,
yeah, it's so sad, right?
yeah.
So that's about the earth.
Okay.
And all right, so we move on.
Yes, yeah.
All right, so wood element happens a lot with couples where there's a lot of anger and sexual frustration, right? It might be an
Hmm.
uneven sex drive, like one person wants to have sex more often than the other person does, and they're frustrated because they're not getting their needs met, and they also
Mm.
don't know how to communicate about,
Mm.
or they don't have a vision for the partnership of like what's our vision together about lovemaking, yeah.
Mm. Hmm.
So that's sexual frustration, like, and because no one wants to talk about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
cool.
And the water element would be like people who just don't have a high sex drive.
Okay.
But sometimes the water element is about our sexuality. You know, that's why there's so many herbs like horny goat weed in Chinese medicine. That's what it's
Okay.
called, horny goat weed.
Wow,
And
nice.
goats ate it and they were procreating. So they saw this herb in the fields. Yeah, it's true.
Okay.
So there's a lot of sex libido tonics because some
Mm-hmm.
people have very low libido. Or it might be that they are disconnected from what it really means to be aroused. So
Mm.
in arousal for women takes like 25, I always say this, 20 to 30, 20 to 45 minutes for a woman to become aroused. And sometimes a woman doesn't even know she wants to have sex until she's aroused. And then she's like, oh,
Mm.
it feels good. Because most
Mm.
women just feel so, they'll tell me they have low sex drive when in reality it's just that they are not aroused. And they're maybe their
Mm.
partner's like, do you want to have sex? Or it's time to make a baby. So they do it, but they're not connected in their body.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. Okay, got it.
That's a big one.
Yeah. I'm going like, oh, I have all of these. I would feel sad if you're working with me at this point. Okay.
Yeah, it's
All
it's
right.
the human thing. This is such a shameful topic that
Mm-hmm.
people don't talk about, which is why I love talking about it because
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't get addressed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's the metal element, which we talked a little bit about before, which is like if we have body trauma where we've armored ourselves or we shut off or we don't like to be touched here, you know, or we're rigid. You know, I have a
Mm.
couple I'm working with where she has to have everything like in a certain way for her to
Mm.
end up having intercourse. There's like a little bit
Right.
of rigidity in her
Right.
metal element. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and
Interesting.
and then ultimately, I think we've stopped with fire, which
Fire.
this is fire is the connection of the divine. It is the love between two people. It is the high spiritual reason why we're making a baby. It's opening our hearts and letting the heart energy drop into the water element, to the kidney energy, from
Mm.
into our loins, right? That great
Mm.
connection where we see our partner and we just want to make a baby with them.
Mm. Okay, so that maybe you're just not in love with your partner. I mean, what is
I
that,
think
or you're just not a,
I think it gets lost with timed intercourse, and we have to make a baby now, and I'm ovulating at this time, and now we've gotten this whole schedule down where like, honey, I'm ovulating, we need to make a baby, and we forgot the juice and the connection and
mm,
our like juicy connection that's a baby, because we've been doing this for a year now and we're exhausted and we're working a
uh,
lot, right? We're working a lot. We don't have time. We're tired, but we have to do it now.
got it. Yes, right. It's kind of like a chore at this point. It's no longer okay. And how about wood?
What is the stuck energy, the frustration we talked about, being angry, sexual
Oh, I'm
frustration?
sorry, we did talk about, okay, so we've hit all the five elements. Um, what I want to do next is break these down a little bit and talk about how you would, since you love talking about this, I find it fascinating. I basically think I may have all of these, so let's talk about all of them. All right, so in the next segment, let's take we have five different elements, but let's kind of group them into little groups, and then talk about how people who could relate to what we just talked about. Now, what do you do? Okay, so maybe you have a wood and energy, earth, water. Like, what's the next step?
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. We've been talking to Denise Wiesner on her book, Conceiving with Love. And in the next segment, we're going to dive into okay, now maybe you kind of identified with a couple of things that we talked about. Now, what do you do as the next step? Thank you so much.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. Would love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.